12 laps complete in the Auto Club 500 presented on Fox by Quaker State. 6 laps under green, and then caution for a sprinkle in turn 4. They're doing a quick track drying, and we will get back to green flag racing. There is Ryan Newman, and a second repair to make sure that that new end plate is properly affixed, and a little pop rivet in the wicker.
Yeah,
and away he'll go.
Normally 3 bolts that holds that on. Now, NASCAR supplies the wings for these cars. When you come to the racetrack, they put the wing on, but the team supply those end plates.
I think we're going to have some audio here from Brian Vickers. Let's listen to what he has to say, and then I think I can follow up.
This carburetor is horrible. I mean, horrible. It died like 4 times on me coming out of the box, and I couldn't get them. I couldn't get the RPM any higher. I don't know what to tell you. We'll just deal with it today. But you know, we had a really good handle on this carburetor thing second half of last year, but we've started back to square one.
So, Larry, what's one of the keys to winning this race? Fuel mileage.
Exactly.
What happens a lot of times, the team, the tuner on the engine, these carburetors have squirters in them that when they're accelerator pumps. And a lot of times I've had tuners to try to get better gas mileage actually unhook the rear one. There's one in the front 2 barrels, there's one in the rear 2 barrels. A lot of times they'll unhook those. It won't accelerate worth a flip out of the pits particularly. But wide open throttle and working the throttle through the turns, you burn less fuel. It's not a lot, but it's that little bit sometimes it takes to win a race.
She is still having a blast up there. But yeah, engine tuners know that coming here, that you've got to work on fuel mileage, and the crew chief hammers. Toyota as a whole, they have not gotten the greatest fuel mileage, so I'm sure they keep pushing the envelope.
The ceiling rising. The rain has stopped. We're about ready to get back to racing, so let's deal with our Aflac trivia question, which of course has a little disclaimer and a qualifier. First California native to win a Cup race. Aflac says the great Dan Gurney, Motor Trend 500, January 1963, Riverside, California. Now, wait a minute, before we get to that, Dan Gurney was born on Long Island. He grew up the son of a Metropolitan Opera singer. He's a Long Island native, used to watch his hero Ted Tappett race at Islip and Freeport, but his racing career started in Southern California, so that's why Dan Gurney is the answer. Johnny Mance won the 1950 Southern 500 in a Plymouth, of which this replica is at the Speedway. He lived in Southern California when he raced, but wasn't born there, born in Indiana, so he's not the correct answer. I'm sticking with Dan Gurney. That's my story, and he was my hero and still is, and I'm sticking to it.
He ran the only time I can remember having a 3-numbered car in NASCAR. You got to have 2 digits, and he had 121, and he won 5 times in 121.
The bottom line, don't ever argue with the duck. That's the answer the duck gave you.
Okay, if you're headed for the refrigerator, come back quick. We're going racing in one more lap.
Yeah, you know, we always talk about how many laps we can run on fuel here, and as we mentioned at the top of the show, it's about 40 to 44 laps. When you're under caution, a good rule of thumb at this 2-mile racetrack is 2 caution laps equal 1 green flag lap, so that has to be factored into the equation when you're figuring your fuel mileage.
And as bad as I hate to mention this, is with rain in the area, it changes everything. It changes your strategy. You're not looking at a 250 lap race necessarily. Not right now, anyway.
Right. Our man Digger, he's hard at work even under caution.
He likes the cars at this speed.
Racing history, as I recall, has been updated and corrected, so I'm not sticking to my answer anymore. In Oakland, California, NASCAR ran a strictly stock race in October 1951. Most of the drivers were from the West Coast. That's now the Sprint Cup Series. Marvin Burke of Pittsburgh, California, is the first native Californian to win in what's now the Sprint Cup Series.
I think when we have questions that go that far back, we probably should refer to Dick Berger and let him make sure he gets us an answer.
1 lap to green. Here's Dave Blaney on pit road. Blaney making his first start of the 2009 season for Prism Motorsports.
As Darrell mentioned, these are cars that are coming back on the pit road, like Joey Logano in the 20, like Dale Earnhardt Jr. They're coming back down to top off of fuel here at lap 17.
I'm surprised more guys didn't do that, because this gives you a few more. It gives you a few extra laps if thing goes back to green for a while over the guys that didn't pit.
Joey Logano, one of the 2 drivers battling for Rookie of the Year.
Had a great run in the Nationwide Series race last night. Got a top 5 finish, and we were talking earlier in the day. I think that was great medicine for him after what he went through at Speed Weeks last week.
And he's brushed the wall here in practice. As Darrell pointed out during our practice coverage on Speed, these cars so much different to drive than those Nationwide Series.
When you mat 850 horsepower, it's a lot different feel than when you mat 700 horsepower. And these things will take off on you in a hurry.
A little bit of a sprinkle. We're going to add one more caution lap. Welcome back to Southern California. Oh, his driver's not in the lead. Nice crowd on hand. The pre-sale for this race was quite light, but every time I walked past a ticket booth this morning, there was a line. There was a very good walk-up crowd for this race, and we look forward to a full house next week in Las Vegas. And right now, the jet dryers are back on the racetrack because a little persistent, maddeningly light sprinkle is falling. So time for an AT&T race break. Chris Myers.
Thanks, Mike. With Jeff Hammond here in the Hollywood Hotel. It's not, we have to worry about last year. They've corrected the problem with water seeping up, so we've been told. And this looks like, I was watching.
You're the only weeper I know here right now.
And I'll weep if we get. But it looks like it's mostly north of us, and it's going through. Even our official weather people in Southern California, they all have those fun names, like Chip Hale and Storm Fields and everything like. They said, don't worry, most of it because the red carpet you don't want to get wet, or the asphalt that these cars are rolling on. It's got to be frustrating though for the drivers after last week.
I think that's the biggest thing after last week. We don't want to come here and find out that this race right here is already been influenced by rain, but hopefully it'll get out of here. We can get into a rhythm. That's the main thing, is get into a rhythm where these guys can go racing, work on their race cars, and figure a few things out. We've already heard from guys like Greg Biffle, Chris, said, hey, I had a great car yesterday, but this ain't the same racetrack I had been running on yesterday. So I think the nationwide race has got to definitely influence what the tendencies that a lot of these teams are going to have to go to as far as working on their cars.
Yeah, are there any advantages for any particular drivers or crews as we get these caution laps where they can kind of work some things out or communicate or do some things that maybe they didn't have a chance to do before we thought we'd roll?
Yeah, well, you do, but at the same time, it's so short into the run that you're not too sure, well, what do I need to do? Do I make a big change here right now, or need to kind of like be patient and see if the track comes back to me? I think early on, we're already seeing that Kyle Busch finishing up that race like he did must have brought some information back over to Steve Addington, the crew chief, because that race car right now is looking very strong, but he's still got to catch Jimmy Johnson, who, to me, has got the car to beat, at least early on.
Yeah, that's what Carl Edwards told us in the pre-race show. He said, I may be a guy who was won here before, but Jimmy Johnson, the driver to beat. To vote for the AT&T Fastest Pit Crew of the Year award from your AT&T phone, text the car number for the pit crew you think will be the fastest and the most valuable in each race. The fan vote for the first place gets the car and crew 10 points. When our Jeff Hammond makes his pick, that crew will receive 5 points, and if the pit crew wins the race, that's 5 bonus points. So your vote counts as a fan, as a viewer. Vote each week for who deserves the AT&T Fastest Pit Crew of